guys. Bug, can you mirror my image and let me mute this Slack? How we doing, guys?
We're great, mate. Hey, everybody. Hey, chat.
Good to see you. Kenny, I kind of came for the dog update. So as much as this is going to be awesome, I feel like now you have
Should we
to.
do it? Should we get? Let me grab him. Get this out of the way for all the early birds. Get to see Arlo. He's grown a lot, man. I just took him to the vet actually today, and he's at 23.3 pounds. I
Whoa,
think when the chat last saw him, it was probably closer to like 19, maybe 20.
that was just a couple weeks ago.
I've grown like a weed.
And what are you feeding this
We're
guy?
gonna have to pay Kenny more money. He's got a whole animal to feed.
No, I just said that any call that doesn't start with an Arlo update is doing
Oh my
something
God.
wrong.
Hello, Allah.
Yeah,
I
that is great.
just woke him up. He's like, "What is going on?"
Look at the ears. He doesn't know
What is happening?
how internet famous he is.
Very sweet boy. All right, Arlo, go
Give
back
the
to your
people what they
business.
want. More Arlo or
What's
whatnot.
up, chat? Welcome in, everybody. We got to
Absolutely.
give you up here for the early birds. Um, cool. All right, Andy and Tom, what's up? How are we feeling?
Very good. Happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Excited to keep getting invited back, mate.
I know you guys did such a good job last time. Now we got both of you. This is like between two firms, except on the outside of one firm.
Yeah.
I think that makes me Zach Galifianakis, which I'm not really thrilled about, but like, let's roll with it.
I love it, man. I love it. Cool. I think we can get started. We got a lot to cover, and I'm super excited to have you guys. So, let's kick it off, guys. So, welcome in, everybody. My name is Kenny. I'm on the community team here at Whatnot, and part of that team and our efforts is to kind of build and execute programs that aim to connect sellers at scale. And so, the Whatnot Sellers account here is just one of those programs. And so, if this is your first time on Whatnot Sellers, go ahead and drop us a follow, bookmark upcoming shows that may be interesting to you. We go live here about 3 to 4 times a month with various kinds of content, everything from covering product updates. We'll interview sellers, we'll interview leadership team like we have here today. Again, just to give you guys another touch point to connect with each other and to connect with us. And with that, we've got a special show lined up for you. This is going to be kind of like a panel interview. And we're going to be diving into like why is now the probably the most exciting time to be a Whatnot seller. And so we're going to get this conversation going. Sorry, let me just turn off these notifications. And we're going to I'm going to ask Andy and Tom some questions. They're going to kind of answer them back and forth, very casual, like a panel or like a podcast. And we're going to kind of be going through some various themes. And so I'll announce the theme when we go into it. If you all have any questions for Andy or Tom, go ahead and drop it in the chat. We've got mods that are pulling those questions, and we're going to do our best to get to as many of them as possible. Of course, we won't be able to get to all of them, and so apologies in advance on that. But we do then, after the show, go through all the questions, go through all the feedback in the chat, and kind of distill that and share it with the relevant people at Whatnot. So everything you do say in the chat is helpful, and we appreciate it. So to help kind of break down this theme of why is it never been a better time to be a Whatnot seller, I'm joined here with two of Whatnot's senior leadership team members. So we've got first up Andy, who's our vice president of marketing, and welcome back, Andy. For those of you who haven't met Andy yet, I guess Andy, can you give us maybe just a real quick TLDR and sort of who you are and what does your team focus on?
Yeah. Hi. Welcome. Thanks for having me, Kenny. I'm glad to be back. And what's up, chat? I think in broadest strokes, our team is focused on bringing more buyers to the platform, bringing more sellers to the platform, telling the great stories of all the amazing things that happen on Whatnot, and then really trying to show up in all the community forward places that we know our community convenes. And so that's from everything from your con like the National to all the work that Kenny and Kiyomi do with the community to make sure that we bring more people to the platform and keep it growing. And that expands from everything from our influencer practice, our social practice, our events practice, and I could go on, but that's it in broad strokes.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. And then joined also by Tom, who's our Chief Product Officer. Tom, welcome back to the show. Great to have you here again, as always. Same question for you. Maybe just a real quick intro for the friends here who haven't yet met you.
Sure. I'm really lucky. My job here at Whatnot is to lead the product and design teams. So that's whenever you use the app and you are playing with a new tab or a new feature, and you think about how the app functions and works. That's the job of my team to design how those features should work and which features we should have. Which is also great because it gives me an excuse to be shopping on Whatnot every day and to call it testing. So right now I am buying as much Australian chocolate as I possibly can out of the drinks and snacks category and trying my best to expense it to work.
We're on to you. We're on to you. Awesome. Thanks again. Thank you again, both, for taking the time to be here today. Before we jump in, again, chat, if you're just joining us, if you have any questions around the topics that Tom or Andy sort of bring up and discuss, please drop them in the chat. And we'll be capturing those and getting to as many as we can towards the end of the show. And again, we've organized our questions today that I'm going to be asking these guys into themes. And so it's going to be a joint conversation with Andy and Tom. They're going to share sort of their unique perspective on various topics and how marketing and product work together to power sort of the seller success that we're seeing here on the platform. So without any further ado, I think we should get right into it. The first theme we're going to kind of be delving into is kind of centered around driving buyer growth at scale. And I'm going to kind of maybe send this one to you, Andy, to kick it off. And so we've seen a surge in buyer growth recently. In fact, new signups are up around 400% year over year, which is just unreal. What sort of initiatives on the marketing side of the house are driving that growth?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. And I think the biggest one is we've really increased the marketing budgets. And that doesn't happen on accident by just flipping some dials. That comes with some really compelling creative and supporting categories where we really get that creative right. And one of the things that propelled a lot of that growth was in early January when we came back after the holidays. We saw a couple truly viral moments of things that we feel as buyers on the platform, of like those magic moments of Whatnot unfold primarily on TikTok. So over the course of a week, there were some really incredible videos, one from a creator named Sarah P and another one from Nina Poole. And truly we had, other than those people having great experiences on Whatnot, those videos went crazy and they really went wild. And we saw some organic growth come from that. And we got into a room and said, what's the magic here and how do we replicate that magic? And while we still already had pretty meaningful marketing budgets prior to that, it really paved the way for, that's a magic piece of creative. Can we replicate that? Can we support those creators? And can we increase our investment in a platform like TikTok? Not the only place that we're spending, but a place we've gone from pretty small spend to very meaningful spend. So once we leaned into that and saw that expand across multiple different providers, it really started to bump us up in a lot of the App Store presence that you've seen. So now we've been regularly in the top 3 and oftentimes #1 in shopping for free apps in the US, and it even crept into the top 10 of overall apps. Tom can speak to that, what that looks like too from a competitive standpoint, but it's pretty amazing to see that kind of 1-2 punch of getting the marketing beats right and then seeing the organic growth as well.
Unbelievable. Tom, anything to add on that?
No, man, I think it's pretty common that when I chat with sellers and buyers, folks say, listen, I've never seen Whatnot do marketing. I usually take that as a good sign, because one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that we're targeting folks who haven't been here before, who aren't existing buyers or shoppers. So, what Andy's just talking to there in terms of like massively expanding the marketing budgets and getting those kind of amplifying those viral moments, it's generally speaking a great sign for everyone if those are being targeted to folks who are yet to join the community, as opposed to you seeing us everywhere.
Yeah, I think the other piece is we're always on the pursuit of not just more buyers, because it sounds great, but we really want to find the right buyers. So people, we measure ruthlessly how many people come through the door, but also how much do they spend? Do the people who spend through these new channels look like users that were there before? Are they the kind of people that want to stick around and follow sellers? And I think having people that mirror that classic behavior that we see on Whatnot, of people really love the buyer experience, they really stick around and they buy more things and they follow more sellers, is something that we want to make sure holds up anytime that we launch a new channel or increase our marketing spend.
Amazing. Yeah, and also for those Android users out there, we're also doing pretty well on the Android App Store. I can report to you guys. And Tom, I guess on the heel of that, we've all got a lot of apps on our phones, right? And I think one of the numbers that we see, like when you go into the App Store, is like number of downloads. And we all know that brands love to sort of market their number of downloads, but are these real buyers? And can you tell us a little bit about these downloads? Who are these people?
Yeah, I'm very happy to report they are very, very real. Most apps, especially apps that have like a community element to them, like Whatnot, typically seen that as you get more mainstream, the engagement per person tends to drop. The theory being your super users always come first. It's the people for whom this app is exactly right that are here first. And then over time, your mom ends up joining, and your friend down the road who's only sort of interested ends up joining. And you see this kind of like average degradation. Actually, that's not been the case for us. If you look over the last year, even with the incredible growth that you talked about, Kenny, with like 400% increase in app downloads, orders per buyer, time per buyer in app, visits per month, all the same or better than they were a year ago. It's just at the kind of 4x scale that you and Andy have been describing. So really excitingly, what we've seen is that like the new folks coming through the door look, behave, spend just like everyone who was here before. And are really excited to join the community that so many folks here have really laid the foundations for. And as to kind of who those buyers are, honestly, the TLDR is increasingly, it's women. First-time buyers in fashion is up more than 500% year on year. There are 5 times more buyers in beauty so far in 2025 than in all of 2024. So, I think it was easy for folks to have this perception for a little while that like, Whatnot was a place where it was just sports cars and sneakers. And so it was kind of, really heavily skewed towards kind of like, 20-year-old men. And Whatnot in 2025 looks like is it's literally for everyone. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you're into. We're in 250 categories right now, selling everything. As we said, chat's going nuts full of boo-boos right now, but I've seen people in here talking about their show selling beads, folks selling coins, knives, and hunting is popping off right now, food, snacks, electronics. The real magic, I think, in the last 6 months for me, just personally, is watching the core that has made this place so good suddenly apply to 400% more people, and yet it looks and feels exactly like Whatnot. It's just a place that is like open for more and more people to come join.
Yeah, and I think the last maybe plug there too is it's not that fashion growth is instead of, it's in addition to.
100%.
And so it's fun to see like the core categories that have been around Whatnot for 4 or 5 years still see accelerated and continued growth.
Yeah, and I can attest, like anecdotally, my father downloaded the app. Father's in his 70s, so he's not, he's not an early adopter of technology, but he downloaded the app several months ago, and I went on the back end and looked at how much he's spent, and I'm afraid my inheritance is probably.
Wait, what's Papa Silver into?
He's into coins and bullion, and he's got
that literally makes sense.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'll share the numbers with you guys after the show. You'll die, because it's a substantial amount. He didn't just download the app, scroll through, and like churn. Like he's a very frequent buyer, and that just kind of goes to show that the great team that the product team is doing on making this app engaging and sticky for users, really, like you said, of all ages, all backgrounds, all interests. So hats off to you and the product squad on that. Andy, I'm going to kick it back to you. What role do social and influencer partnerships play in sort of fueling this type of growth?
It's huge. I can talk a little bit about both social and influencer and how those two worlds overlap. But for people on the chat that don't know, one of the biggest marketing levers that we have in places where we spend a ton of time is an influencer or creators. And we try to go find people that really live and breathe our categories and have a dream fit for both their interest in Whatnot, but also can they activate their audience and say, hey, this is a great place for people who follow me and follow me potentially for one or a couple different topics that are really home based for Whatnot, and bring those people over to the platform. So we're in that constant pursuit across multiple categories of who are those top creators. Can they find fun activation points that make a ton of sense? And so we have countless examples of people that we work with, some since the beginning of the year that we're really fired up on. I can use a couple examples in categories like coins, where we work with somebody named Pawnbroker Pickers, and M&R in Legos, and I could go on and on. But like, what we love to see is not just, hey, we worked with them once. We love people that we work with over time. We'd like to see the growth of their audience. I think Pawnbroker Pickers just celebrated 100K followers on YouTube, and we were able to support that. So influencer, pretty dedicated practice inside of marketing. And then comes the social side. And one big learning from the stuff that I mentioned at the beginning of the year is finding people who just have a lot of love for Whatnot and are great at talking about it and doing things like buyer hauls or buyer testimonials. It ends up being amazing content. And then we can take that best performing organic social content and turn it into paid creative. We've really found that magic 1-2 punch of like, these are people who live and breathe our product, and we can turn them into ambassadors and put that into marketing campaigns. So I think those two worlds live quite close together. And then there's our own content. So things that we make organically that are trying to broadcast whatnot to the outside world. I'll point to a great example of when the Labubu craze was just starting to take off. We made a great piece of content of just what is Labubu because the internet needed to know. And now if you look on both TikTok and Instagram, one of our top performing posts ever, and we've also been able to marry that between marketing campaigns as well. So all those worlds, I think, gonna do the same thing, which is how do we tell the story and find those right magic moments of whatnot in some way, shape, or form.
I'm going to be honest. I think my favorite social post this year was still the Lego washing machine. I
mean,
did not know that there was such a thing as a washing machine for Legos, but it makes total sense.
Yeah, follow Whatnot UK. That's a good one.
Definitely. Yeah, I would just say, I have notifications turned on for most of our Whatnot handles, and just over the last 2.5 years, the evolution of the content. I mean, we're making some incredibly good content these days, and it's so good to see the reaction of those things, going viral. And like I tuned into that one about the Labubu because I genuinely didn't know what it was. And I saw the post and I clicked on it and I was like very informative and also just super well done. So love to see that sort of content coming from the creative house.
Yeah,
or creative
I just see
marketing.
my favorite chat comment too, which is I'm learning so much weird stuff in this stream. Lol.
Yeah, that's good.
We're absolutely nailing the content now, boys.
Yeah, I mean that's really what we're set here to do. So that's good. Let's turn the theme to turning demand into seller opportunities. So I guess what sort of data are we seeing that shows how all of this buyer growth is translating into success for our sellers here on Whatnot?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the obvious statement, which is that growth goes somewhere. So when we say we're seeing such a massive increase in buyers, that literally each time is a buyer purchasing from a seller on Whatnot. There are lots of marketplaces in the world where that marketplace is also a primary seller and has a vested interest in directing that traffic. All of those spend going on shows for sellers who are here on Whatnot, which is great. But as we talk about, it's probably worth me kind of explaining. I think last time I was on the show, Kenny, there were a bunch of questions about how the algo works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably worth breaking down that like there's actually multiple algorithms that run on our platform. And there's three different ones that's probably worth breaking down in answer to that. The first one is like, the core algorithm. So if you're an existing buyer or seller, you've been here for a couple of years, mostly you get the core algorithm, which is going through and saying, who have you purchased from before? Is that person live and how do we show them to you? Or is there a seller similar to them who you've watched a little bit of, or who sells similar products that we might want to recommend you to? That's like for most people here who are existing core members of the community, that's the thing that drives your feed. But there's actually two really important ones that I think kind of come into play during a period of growth like this, which is we have a dedicated new sellers kind of growth algorithm, which basically says when a new seller joins the platform and goes live, the first couple of times, it is very deliberately artificially boosting their ranking in order to kind of expose them to an audience because no one's seen them before. And so there isn't a reason why we would say, here's the view history. And then in particular, what that does is it's looking for sellers who are doing well in their first streams. It's folks who have, items pinned, who are running lots of auctions, who have, are successfully converting viewers to buyers. And it continues to accelerate them such that they kind of, have an opportunity to really break out. And it's been exciting to watch. We've seen sellers across a whole bunch of categories, but in particular categories like beauty, where a seller joins the platform just organically, goes and signs up one day, and in the course of a couple of months is doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a week in perfume sales, just off the back of, we've detected that this is the people who see the show really like it and keeps accelerating them through, and then they get picked up by those core algorithms. I think the third and exciting algorithm which has been running lately is this idea of like new categories. So it's easy to come to Whatnot as an existing buyer and feel like, cards, sneakers, women's fashion kind of like dominate your feed because that's where historically a lot of the kind of selling opportunity has been. But what we've got running now is a new algorithm that basically goes through and says what categories are starting to emerge where there's increasingly new sellers in there where we see buyer activity. How do we accelerate the whole category and start pushing all of those sellers? And so it functions the same way as the new seller kind of algorithm, except instead of trying to pick an individual, it takes a whole category like knives and hunting or food and drink and pushes that whole category out into the feed and exposes it to more and more folks. And what's really cool in that is that we're seeing growth in those new categories is coming not just from net new buyers joining the platform, It's also from existing buyers because it turns out everybody needs another pair of AirPods because they put their last one through the wash. So electronics actually has broad appeal. And it turns out everybody likes candy. And so as we kind of push that out to folks, food and drink does really well with everyone. And so growing new sellers isn't zero sum. It's possible for new sellers to come and thrive from existing buyers. But then as we add new buyers, there's just a plethora of new and interesting sellers to sell to them. And like, for those of you who've been here long enough, you can remember a day when you would go and look at your favorite category and there wasn't anyone selling in it at that point in time. It was just kind of like, come back later. Which is a strange thing to say because the internet is functionally an on-demand medium. Like, can you imagine going to YouTube and them saying, sorry, we don't have any videos for you right now, come back later? But that was true in the early days for certain categories and whatnot. And as we have seen, more buyers and more sellers joining, the fact that there is always something happening in all of the categories keeps engaging those buyers. It's part of what drives new buyers joining and being as successful as old ones. And then we can kind of cross-pollinate between those groups. So it's been really exciting to see. And I think in particular, that new category work is paying pretty big dividends this year. So, I mentioned it already, but like food and drink, knives and hunting, baby and kids really popping off right now as people kind of branch out from, broad fashion into kind of like, selling baby and kids clothes. So the speed at which new categories are emerging is really exciting. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities there. As your initial question is like, what's the opportunity for a seller? It's try selling new things. You don't have to be just a single category seller and whatnot. There are really big audiences for lots of things. And the discovery mechanisms work increasingly well at moving audiences around depending on what you're selling.
Kenny, I'm stealing your thunder because I see the chat and I got a shout out in there, a request for the equestrian category. While we were going, I haven't seen equestrian as a requested category.
Listen, I don't know how well USPS is going to ship a horse, but I am down to try if you are.
Or a saddle.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. No, that's super insightful. Thank you, Tom. So as more buyers join the app, how is your team on the product side making it easier for sellers to convert that demand into sales?
Yeah. So I think the first part is how do we keep working on buyer onboarding in such a way that it routes people to the right categories and types of sellers to begin with? Because I think one of the underrated advantages of live content is you, the seller, play a really important role in onboarding and converting folks to being buyers, right? So like easy to kind of forget that every stream that you are live, somebody in that stream is either new to that category or new to whatnot entirely. And so having in your repertoire the spiel of like, hey, welcome to my show. I'm a seller who sells X. I typically go live at these times. Be sure to kind of, follow. Almost like that now kind of completely normal YouTuber saying, remember to like and subscribe. Like having that as part of your, your host performance, really important yourself for kind of helping to convert. But for us, we start with the question that says, okay, there's now tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people pouring through onboarding in any given day. How do we quite quickly route you to the right categories? So if you looked at what were the most selected categories in onboarding late last year, it was exactly what you might imagine. It was sneakers, collectibles, kind of cards, the historic, traditional kind of whatnot elements. When you go through and you look at what are the top selected categories in onboarding right now, it is fashion, it is beauty, it is luxury bags, it's knives and hunting, it's outdoor equipment, like it's all sorts of more diversified new things as these buyers come through. So what we've got to do is just make sure that those categories are there and right. So thank you genuinely for the category suggestions. It's quite helpful to kind of pull those in. And then after buyers have made those selections, we've got work to do in that kind of algorithmic space to kind of put people in the right spot. And then the last one is we've been experimenting and shipped a new thing, which we call progressive onboarding. All of you are pros where you know how whatnot works right now. And so it kind of seems intuitive. But these days, when a new buyer comes into a stream, there's a series of kind of very timely prompts that just remind them, listen, everywhere else where you buy that isn't a live auction, you first click buy and then you go to the checkout and now you've got loads of time to put your credit card in. It actually takes a little bit of explaining to say to folks, I need you to put your credit card in up front. Don't worry, I'm not going to charge you any money. But when the moment comes, you're going to want to bid and then it's going to be binding. And so there's probably largely invisible to folks who have been here a while, but very serious work underway to kind of help explain the format of live, as well as who a seller is, as well as what they're selling, all simultaneously as somebody onboards. There's a bit of nuance to it because some of you do 3-second sudden deaths and it's moving fast and furious. And so like the level of information overload when chat is popping off and there's something running and we're trying to put in a pop-up that says, hey, FYI, please give me your credit card. You know, there's a lot to it. And so we tend to run a lot of experiments, but seeing really, really positive signs right now that we can convert folks from any of any interest level and kind of like successfully onboard them. But, you know, we're really lucky, as I said at the start, to be able to leverage also great sellers who have a lot of influence over whether or not a buyer converts as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Look, we're getting a lot of really great questions from the chat. So I'd want to kind of maybe not blaze through the rest of the questions that I've already prepared.
Okay, Kenny, you can say
it. No, I'm saying we should keep it moving. The next theme is going to be tools that empower sellers, right? So, we recently announced the account health dashboard and metrics for sellers. How does account health help sellers understand their performance and stay in good standing?
Sure. It's important just to kind of like ground account health in a big statement, which is we fundamentally believe that Whatnot sellers want to do the right thing by their customers and want to keep improving. There will always be examples that you can find on a subreddit somewhere, but like overwhelmingly, Whatnot sellers come here because they want to, build a really good community and they want to look after their customers. And account health's job is basically to help you understand what's happening in aggregate with regards to things like shipping and quality, stuff that tends to happen after you think about I've made the sale. Like 50% of your customer's experience is still yet to happen. And account health's job is just to kind of show you that. So an example of how that's played out is one of the things we heard a lot in pilot is sellers contacting us to say, listen, I swear I drop off my packages the very next day, but your dashboard says it's 3 days. What's wrong? And what that helps, I think, expose for folks is sometimes when you drop off your packages at USPS or another postal service, it can sit there for days. And on the buyer end, like if you put yourself in the shoes of the buyer doesn't know that you've dropped it off. They don't have a scan that says this thing's in transit. All they know is they bought this thing a week ago and it hasn't shipped yet. And so on the buyer side of the experience, it's like genuinely quite negative. And we know that big delays, big unexplained delays like that do lead to buyers choosing not to buy from you again as a seller. So giving sellers that information actually helps people optimize the experience for them and their buyers. So I spoke to a couple sellers last week who started using a different post office than they were using before and experimenting with like, there's probably 3 within 10 minutes of my house. Which one should I choose to make drop-offs? Because they can see that one scans same day instantly every package, and others, it may be sitting in a collection room for a couple of days, maybe even a week at a time. And so the whole point of account health is to kind of give you transparency as to what is happening in the buyer experience after someone's made a purchase on your stream, with the belief that you will use that information to kind of improve their experience and optimize for your customers' needs.
Thank you for that. Okay, what recent updates are you most excited about that directly benefit sellers? And by the way, Andy, a lot of the questions that a chat has dropped in are marketing related, so sit tight. I know you, but a lot of these that I've already pre-scripted seem to be oriented more towards the product side. But yeah, what recent updates are you most excited about, Tom, that recently benefit sellers directly?
Honestly, Kenny, the ones that I am most jazzed about are the ones that help folks kind of keep selling at volume and shipping at volume. So it's the little things that make a big impact to kind of how people use their time. It's improvements to run next that allow you to queue up, lots of different items of a similar shipping profile and run them over and over so that you can kind of, sell more per hour and you can move more product. It's things like sorting options and filtering for shipping that I think make a really big difference. And we're actually rolling out a small, but I think really critical feature right now. Some folks have noted in the chat already, they're like, hey, it feels like Seller Hub has moved on mobile. What the heck's going on? And it's actually moving front and center into the app. We're putting Seller Hub mobile right in the middle button in your app, because it will now, for every seller, tell you, here's how many packages you have, that need to get a label generated today to stay in, good guidance. Here's how many things need to get dropped off to the post office today in order to kind of like stay inside SLAs. And so it's designed to kind of help every seller see what do I need to do today to keep looking after my customers and reduce some of that mental load that comes with all of the work that's around selling. And what comes with that is, in the next couple of weeks, increasingly a suite of mobile fulfillment tools as well that lets you print labels more easily from your phone, that lets you kind of manage your drop-offs more easily from your phone. So it's all designed to kind of reduce that cognitive load, because selling is hard and being live a lot is hard, and we just want to make sure that we minimize the effort around the business around being a seller.
I see the chat. There's a lot of love for the kind of where we moved the seller hub, and there's also a lot of like, I couldn't find it, and there's kind of like these growing pains, which we hear both, but ultimately, like for my, I go live quite often, I'd say, and I like having it, right center. So instead of clicking the hamburger and then clicking, it's like it's less clicks to get to the stuff that I really need to be on top of as a seller.
But a completely fair note from chat that when we move a thing, it would be nice to have a call out prompt. So yes, that's actually coming for the second half of people who get it as it rolls out of experiment.
That'd be great. Yeah, and like I said, chat, I'm not able to keep up with everything that I'm seeing here in the chat, nor will I remember all of it, but I will download the chat transcript and I will parse it and share it with, Tom, Andy, and whoever else internally would make sense to see it. So thank you for all of this really great feedback. Kenny, GPT is crazy. Okay, next theme is building with sellers for sellers. So this is the last kind of theme I want to touch on before we take questions that we got from the chat, which there's some really great ones and there's quite a lot. So what does the seller feedback influence? Like, how does our seller feedback, we just talked about it. We're getting a ton of feedback here. We get it through other channels, whether it's customer support, whether it's, some of the programming, webinars that the community team does, or there's so many ways that we kind of get seller feedback, different touch points. And how does that sort of shape the roadmap of the product? Maybe you can share an example of that.
Sure. I mean, the shortest answer, it is the driver of all changes that we make in the app. It starts by kind of collecting customer feedback, as you said. There's a lot of it because there are now, millions of people in this community. And so there is a lot of different perspectives and people have different needs, but it starts with what are we hearing from the folks who use it all day, every day? What do we think the right set of solutions for that look like? And then how do we, balance how that impacts others? So, I spoke to you and some of the community leaders recently about things like the gifting change that has a disproportionate impact in the community. Same as we prioritize new things, which is like, who do we think these tools are primarily for, or are they for everyone? In which case, how do we balance the needs of someone who's running sudden death shows versus bin shows, or somebody who is going live every day versus someone who goes live once a month? And so we think through those, different opportunities for how many people it can help. And then as we build, everything we build starts by being piloted or tested with a small group of sellers, and then we incorporate that feedback over and over. So to give you an example, right now, we're working with a group of sellers who mostly do pallet sales of sneakers and fashion, because those are the folks who've said, listen, I love your, quality listings. I'd really like to make them. It doesn't work for my business when we need to go and, sell 1,000 items a show, and I don't literally know what they are before I pull them out of the pallet. So we take that as a challenge, which is, okay, if I can solve the make a quality listing for that group of people, it will work for everyone, because everybody else has slightly more time than those sellers. And so we have product managers and engineers out literally on site with those sellers daily at the moment, just understanding their business and their workflows. We are, building and testing tools with them directly. And then as we see that that's working for that use case, we just start expanding out the number of sellers in those categories we test those tools with, and then the number of categories that we test that with, and then so on and so forth, so that we can go to every seller and say, listen, it's now really easy for you to make high quality listings really quickly. And so every feature that we launch goes through a similar process like that. I picked that one arbitrarily because I happen to be working on that right now personally, but for every feature we launch, it's gone through a similar process. So yeah, genuinely thank you for the feedback, and please keep it coming.
Yeah. And I could say, like, from the inside looking out, I've been at many companies that like to say, like, we're customer centric. We always listen to the customers. And it's kind of something that you hear a lot of, product or service type companies, but I've never been at a company that really does drive so much, or like you said, almost all of the product features that come down the pipe are something that we've heard, like a critical mass of users say, we need this to be able to be more successful, and we do it. One that comes to mind earlier on was like, sellers were using post-it notes, remember, in the back of their sort of like framed. They were just kind of they would do show notes, and we're like, well, we should just let them be able to do that, so they don't have to create show like post-its or like write with crayon on a piece of paper behind them. And that's kind of like just a tiny little example of how our sellers usually hack what they need, and then we see that and we're like, oh, let's build that for them and make it easier for them.
Yeah. And Tom mentioned, chatting with sellers last week. We're doing it all the time. I was in the stream then and was talking to one of my favorite sellers, Pure Nostalgia, shout out Pure. And he said, oh, I saw the logo reveal, but he didn't know it was me. And I was like, oh, that was me. That was me. And so we set up some time. We actually chatted and went through kind of a bunch of different things that his experience was in going through the app. And he had got a new phone and had some new microphone issue with that. And it was surfaced like a pretty deep cut bug that had happened, but until I talked to him, we couldn't surface an important thing like that we then promptly fixed. So talking to our users, I think, is what are we building in the future, but also what are people's experience? We're always listening and we take it to heart.
Absolutely. It's also, it's also really cool that everyone that works at Whatnot Chat goes live on Whatnot, sells on Whatnot, buys on Whatnot. So, not just the product team, but the whole organization is really, really like in the know on what we're building here for you all. And so that also kind of helps the feedback loop kind of come full circle, even internally. And some of the greatest feedback I've seen comes from just people that work here. They're like, hey, I was live and I saw this. And it's like, wow, that's a good idea, So it's all of your feedback, chat, and it's also kind of the culture here at Whatnot is to use what it is that we're building for you all, so that we can deeply understand it and what's working well and what's not working well. Tom, what's your product team's philosophy when it comes to deciding sort of which tools to build? Because we have probably a backlog of 1,000 cool features that we'd like to build. How do you decide which ones we're going to build?
I don't know if I have a pithy one-liner on exactly how we decide, but I think it starts in two places. It's how do we create the most value for buyers and sellers here? So it has to be something that genuinely, delivers value for folks, as opposed to kind of hacks metrics and just kind of like moves a number on a dashboard. And I think the second one is we always try and start as small as possible to validate that an idea is good. And then we work as fast as we can to iterate on that kind of seed of a good idea and get it out into people's hands as fast as possible. So, there are lots of good, exciting, shiny ideas. I remember a bunch of people sending us messages when Apple launched the Vision Pro that we needed a Vision Pro app and we needed a big TV app and we needed all these things. And it's like, that is cool. And I bet you our engineers would be excited to build on it, but it's probably not the thing that genuinely adds value to folks. And then the second one is whenever we're trying something new, and I really genuinely appreciate the patience that our sellers have here. We try and build half of the thing in order to validate that it's right before we kind of like really plow into it. So as an example, if you shout out the sellers who were first pilots of the Rewards Club, rather than build the very complex how to set up your Rewards Club flow, we literally just got on the phone with the first 13 pilot sellers and set it up for them manually in the back end so that we could see if buyers cared about unlocking tiers. And once we know that buyers care, then we know it adds value to sellers, and then we'll go and build the whole piece. But you kind of start with that smallest value that you can add and then move really quickly. So, we're really, really lucky that we get that full-time feedback loop from folks, and, increasingly lucky that there are folks who take time out of running a business to give us that real feedback so that we can improve it for everyone.
Yeah. Shout out to Dan for plugging all those in
that
manually.
Man was crazy. Dan was
Do you remember that week?
He was I think set up 148 Rewards Club programs manually himself.
Yeah, that was something. Cool. Look, we're just gonna kind of skip these next two, honestly, because there's just a lot of questions from chat, and I want to make sure that we can hear as many of our sellers here as we can. So with that being said, let's pivot. These are questions we got from you, chat. We're gonna sort of send them out to Andy and Tom, and whoever can answer it can just take it. First question comes from Sophisticated Thrift. Will Whatnot ever sell Whatnot branded gear for sellers? I think, Andy, you could speak to that.
Yeah, the answer is yes, and soon. We just got the first proofs of stuff, so it's coming quick. I don't have an exact date, but when I was on this same chat 2 weeks ago, trust me, it's happening. We'll make it easy for people to get, and we'll roll it out in some waves. But we just checked it out and are excited to get our full orders in stock. But
Steph, that was the number one question at Company All Hands when Andy debuted the new brand too.
Yeah,
which is like, but when can I get a hoodie?
Oh, I want the hoodie too. So it's not, you're not alone, and we want to make it easy for folks.
Yeah, I think everybody's excited to get their hands on some merch. which by the way, you could tap into this giveaway chat. We're running some of these retro previous logos. So these are actually, what would you say, like now vintage,
Throwback.
right, Andy?
Limited edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're never going to be making these ever again. These are just these are those wind up whatties, and so kind of a cool desk toy. So tap into the Givey and maybe you can get it. Another question coming in. I don't see a username with this one, but the question is, how are we supporting small sellers on the platform and ensuring that they can compete against the big businesses? I think this kind of goes back to, Tom, what you were alluding to on the new seller algo.
Yep, I think that's exactly right, which is within established kind of categories. I think it's really important to note that the algorithms or like automatically want diversity there and continue to kind of promote sellers within that. But particularly for new sellers and sellers within new categories, there is a very, very big focus in the discovery team right now for making sure that people can start and really grow really quickly. So I talked about, we've got sellers in, beauty, for example, who started as early, like, as late as February and are already doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a month, which is a good sign for me that the ecosystem works in terms of somebody being able to start and go live. And listen, individual examples of one-off seller obviously don't always make for the, the rule, the kind of the exception rather than the rule sometimes. But it's really good evidence for me that if you have good products, if you are going live frequently, if you are doing your best to kind of, market yourself as well, and you are creating that good environment for the show, that all of the evidence we see says that it is really genuinely possible for people to kind of build big businesses here on Whatnot. I actually saw a couple of times in the chat as we've been sitting here, folks posting, Whatnot feeds me and my family. And I'm really, lucky. And honestly, that's why we come into work in the morning. It's like really exciting to see that feedback in the show. And just know, like, it's in everybody's interest for there to be a large number of sellers succeeding, and for that to be a diverse group as opposed to it being concentrated in one or two streams. So it's very important to how all of our products work.
Awesome. Next question comes from that win mama. How do we find out about on-app events?
Yeah, so for people on the chat that don't know, our team spends a ton of time building both category specific and platform wide on-app events. And so in the last few months, we've had things like the Super Bowl, which was the biggest day ever on the app at the time, and some of the biggest events that we do, like Whatnot Card Show and Whatnot Con, which was just 2 weeks ago. The easiest way now is to subscribe to our emails on MailChimp, and our tools are getting a lot better here. So some of you might have found in the app when you came in, we target some surfaces to our sellers. You might have seen us in your For You page that was targeted to just sellers on Whatnot. And so we'll have increasingly more tools and better places to promote on-app events so that they're easy to find and easy to participate and help support your business. Anything else that I missed there?
No, that works.
Yeah, I think also, chat, if you're not following, we have a great blog URL, like a company blog, where sometimes we announce those events as well. Casey or Kiyomi, if you don't mind pinning the blog URL for the folks in here that might have not seen that blog before. I think it's whatnot. I think
teamwhatnot.blog. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, a plug, just check your settings to make sure you have marketing emails turned on, because that is where Andy and team send you the note that says there is an event happening.
Yeah. And we like I said, we are in constant pursuit of making sure after we build the great event, the last thing we want to make is hard to find. So we want to make sure that we have more surfaces that we can get those things front and center for people who are excited about them.
Awesome. Next question comes from Irene1175. Do we really need more sellers? How do you work on more buyers?
So the honest answer, Irene, is yes, we do. And everybody wants that, because if you think about it, like building a marketplace is this kind of balancing act of, you need to make sure that there are buyers come here for great sellers. So you want to make sure that when buyers arrive, there is the right seller for them. And increasingly, as you get more and more buyers and they're more diverse, you need more sellers in order to kind of satisfy what they want. And the same on the inverse, which is like, we need to make sure that we're delivering buyers so that all of those sellers succeed. And it is really one of those, like, a rising tide lifts all boats and everybody succeeds style environment. We, pretty carefully monitor buyer to seller ratios. We look at the number of sellers who are kind of, succeeding or not. And genuinely, right now is the best possible time in Whatnot's history to start selling and to be a seller, in terms of the number of buyers coming into the app. As you mentioned, Kenny, 400% year-on-year growth in terms of people downloading. We've talked about all the new categories today that are seeing greatly outsized growth even from that. So yes, it sounds counterintuitive, but there's like a reason, if you think about even like comparisons to like, retail shopping malls, there's like a reason that you end up with a design district where all the furniture stores move to. It's because there's foot traffic there of people looking to buy sofas. There's a reason you end up with like the electronics mall where all of the people selling computer parts move to, and it's because there's foot traffic there. And so having a thriving category where there are lots of sellers going live means buyers will come. It's bad to be the only seller in a category. It's much better to be one of many sellers in a thriving and growing category.
Add anything to add, Andy?
I mean, I think we started the call on a lot of the things we're doing to grow the buyer base as well. And so
Yeah.
I don't think these are mutually exclusive at all. We not only just increase the investment, but just making sure that, the things you see on growth have not happened by accident. They have happened by us being pretty procedural and smart about how we make sure that those marketing dollars are an investment in our future. And that investment in the future is we find the right people, they stick around, they support our sellers. A lot of those buyers turn into sellers themselves. And so we're always just trying to figure out how do we keep that ecosystem growing and thriving.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question comes up from Fundamentals. Shout out to you. Is there a new feature I love this question. Is there a new feature on the horizon that you're especially excited about? I guess this is for either of you, both of you.
There are many. I don't know how many of them I want to necessarily tease today. But for me, I think the biggest opportunity for a bunch of our sellers is how do we make buying fixed price, like buy it now items, as attractive and exciting for buyers as auctions. I talk to a lot of sellers who feel like there's pressure for them to run dollar starts, and that leads to kind of pressure on their business. And Whatnot is not a dollar start auction platform. Whatnot is a place where you can successfully sell anything. And I think there's a lot of work that's incoming in terms of how do we make the actual buy it now during live experience better and better. And genuinely would encourage folks to say, if you feel uncomfortable running dollar starts, don't. I run $10 starts in my shows. I do a mixture of like buy it now and auctions. And I think there are lots and lots and lots of sellers who build thriving businesses on Whatnot with fixed price items or bigger than dollar starts. And I want to make that the norm rather than something that people feel like, we need to prove to them. And there's some features coming for that.
Yeah, and even in addition to features, thinking about marketing moments or campaigns that are on the horizon, summer is always a really fun time for the business because it's the heart of con season. It's when we get to really show up in front of our communities. We have an event called the National, which is the biggest sports card conference. So not that and that alone, but it is one of those moments that we look forward to every year to really talk to the users, both buyers in the community, sellers in the community, and like kind of see the magic of Whatnot on full display in the like front and center environment where we can see the thing that we've talked about a lot here, which is just like how many people are invested so deeply in the platform.
Just your general reminder though, if you're going to a con in the summer, deodorant is your friend and everybody else's. Yeah. Please.
Tune into Tom's next stream. I'll get you geared up.
Yeah, if you've ever been to a con, you know exactly why Tom said that.
You know what I'm saying, chat.
Yeah. If you know, you know. All right. Soulja Mom is saying or asking, where do we find information on app updates to see what's new or coming soon?
Soulja Mom, when we have news to share, we always put it on the blog, which the team kind of talked about before, which is blog.teamwhatnot.com. But also, really honestly with y'all, we try and move as fast as humanly possible. So sometimes the best place to find out what's new is you'll experience it in the app. You will on any given day have a potential to be in somewhere between 10 and 30 experiments where we are trying something new in the app in order to see how it works. So, be excited when you are, and you've kind of, found a wild Pokemon just floating through the app. But as we, confirm if those experiments are working and we're rolling out new things, whether it's new categories, new features, events, or any of those kind of programs, they always end up on the blog.
Yeah, and I say, just to add to that, Tom, I say, we cover a lot of them here, right, on this channel on Whatnot Sellers.
Or come see your boy Kenny.
Yeah, we do the blog post every month, kind of around the beginning of each month, which covers product updates. That's on the blog, and then we usually come here the day later or a couple days later to sort of unpack whatever we shared in the blog post there. So yes, come see your boy Kenny, talk through product updates, and you can bookmark those. They're scheduled out already on the app. Beautiful Deals is asking, is Whatnot going to be moving into other countries?
You want to take that one?
Sure. Yes is the short answer. Whatnot's currently in 9 countries. shout out the international squad of both kind of staff, sellers, and buyers. So if those of you don't know, we are currently live in the US, Canada, UK, France, Germany, the Netherlands, I think it's Austria, and Belgium and Australia. And if you want to guess which one I'm most excited about, it's definitely Canada.
Belgium, right?
Belgium for sure. I want somebody in food and snacks to sell frites.
You gotta let me know what the best Australian snacks are, Tom. I've never been there. And
crumbles. You can
what are they called?
Get them on Whatnot. I've got a seller for you, Kenny, but it's honeycomb wrapped in Cadbury chocolate.
Tim Tams.
Tim Tams, is that what it's called?
A violet crumble.
Violet crumble. All right, chat. You heard it here first.
They're absolutely unreal.
All right, cool. Yeah, send me a link. Okay, next question comes from Now Showing. Any plans to increase the analytics available to sellers? I would love more high-level analytics around number of users live at certain times, things like that.
Short answer is yes. We've got a couple different work streams on this at the moment. One is, what information can we give you while you are live in order to help you adjust? There's some work going on right now, which will probably be in experimentation and development for the next couple months, but I would expect to see something generally available later in the year. This is like, how do we highlight? It's kind of like the information you get on who from your rewards club is here, but expanding that to like the audience in general. I mentioned earlier, for example, that you might want to, include a spiel in your stand-up, which is like introducing yourself and like your show and when you're typically live. Would be handy, for example, to tell you that more than half the people currently in your show have never purchased from you, so that you can be reminded to go and do that. And then there's the second element, which is post-purchase, and how do we give you broad analytics? There's the hint in the question that we might even go broader into, like, here are like platform level or ecosystem level analytics. I think we'll have to keep thinking about how much of that we necessarily want to kind of publish, but heard loud and clear that folks are hungry to improve and hungry for information that can help them improve. And so we hear you. And all I'll say in the interim of that is, like, experiment. One of the magical things about a live platform is you get real-time feedback from your community. So if you're worried about, like, I saw someone before say, when are you introducing reserves? We have got that already. It turns out it's the dollar that you start at. So if you wanted a $10 reserve, start your auction at $10. If you wonder if you could successfully sell in knives and hunting, try a show in knives and hunting and see how you go. The ability to experiment, I think, is the other way for you to get real-time feedback from your followers or from your community. Obviously, we'll come to the party with as much data as we can muster.
Sweet. All right. Next question comes in from Strawberry Swag. Can you guys create a shopping bag or cart for each stream so that I don't have a zillion transactions on my bank statement?
So Strawberry, I would love nothing more than to be able to kind of batch processing, which is what this is called. It's quite tricky in a live environment, because I want you to imagine there's 50 things sold in a show and you, Strawberry, buy 5 of them. And then 2 hours later, when you go to check out and we batch process, your payment fails. Now, everybody who was in that show and may have been a bidder on that and wants to purchase on that doesn't get the opportunity to, and the seller doesn't sell those 5 items. And so I think the heart of the question is right, which is, how do we minimize the kind of like velocity problem of, like, I'm getting lots of different charges on my card, and periodically that means banks also look at this and say, yo, this is pretty weird, and you get flagged maybe by your credit card company. So opportunity for us to improve that, yes. I do think because Whatnot is live and the rest of the e-commerce ecosystem just isn't, the product solutions here end up being kind of different than they might look like everywhere else, where it's a standard shopping cart or a shopping bag. But love the way you're thinking about it, Strawberry, and our payments team definitely are trying for solutions in this space.
Thank you. Organic beauty thrifts. As a new seller, what's a good rule of thumb on how many times I should go live to expand my audience?
I don't know that I have a hard rule on this one. I just say consistency is key if you're trying to drive tune in. So it's not necessarily about, like, do it 10 times and then give up. It's more of a, like, you decide, are you going live at regular times? Because if you think about it, you might have customers elsewhere. They're used to you always being around. So you need to be able to explain to them, I will be live on Whatnot at these times. And then humans are fundamentally creatures of habit. I open up Whatnot and do my shopping in the evening after I've put my kids to bed and I finally get some quiet. And so I am invariably going to buy from sellers who are live after 8 p.m. And so if you're live at 8 p.m. one day, but then never live again at that time, the likelihood of me being able to find you and purchase from you again is much lower, even if I wanted to. And so that degree of consistency, whether it's time of day, day of week, or just kind of, every day I go live for an hour, we've found to be a really high correlation with success. But I don't think there's a one size fits all rule. Anything I missed?
No, I mean, we just celebrated this morning one of the fastest sellers ever to get to $1 million in sales, and they're already going live 13, I think it was 13.8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a perfect answer here of exactly what amount of time, but I do think that reinforce be a creature of habit. If we told everybody to go live at a certain time, it would of course not work, because there's people shopping in the never-ending mall that is Whatnot at all times. And so if we said everybody go live at 7, it wouldn't work to keep the ecosystem healthy.
Also, please don't all go live at the same time. I don't want you to crash the app.
Yeah.
And you also don't need to go live for 13 hours a day to be successful.
You most certainly do not.
I'll tell you, chat, my story. So I started working here a little over 2.5 years ago. I go live once a month on Saturday, and I do it with my nephew. And over the last, when we first went live, I didn't know. I'm not a reseller. I sell Hot Wheels. I didn't know a thing about Hot Wheels. Didn't bring any kind of following along. So started with 0 followers and maybe had 2 or 3 people in my first show. And I don't even remember if I sold anything. Consistently have gone live once a month for 2.5 years. And now, I've got, I think, 8,000 followers. And if I went live right now, I would immediately have 50 people in the room. So it is truly a consistency, kind of like a, stick to it, keep showing up. Go live when you feel like going live is what we like. The community team likes to tell newer sellers, like, go live when you're in the right headspace to do it. Like Tom said, like, he likes to do his shopping when he puts the kids down and he's got, his head is free to do that. So yeah, similar with going live, like, find a good time in your day or week where you can focus on the show and try to stick to that time of the week and keep showing up. And I think, over time, you will gain followers and loyal customers.
Kenny, if you bring that adorable puppy to your show, you'll have 60 followers immediately. I promise you.
Yeah, perhaps I should. We've got like 6 more questions. I know we're running short on time. Maybe we rapid fire these, Tom and Andy, just kind of get through them. All right, cool. M Medina 2864. In purchases, will they ever allow us to search by who we purchased from?
Yes. And also in your orders, we will let sellers search for buyers. Coming.
Great. Yep. Florida Brick Mom, can we bring back gifting? It's a great way to support sellers when you don't want to buy anything for yourself.
Short answer, short term, no. But obviously we would love to support gifting. I think it is one of those magical elements of the Whatnot community. In rapid fire, I can't really get into the fact that it was very small in its usage, Florida Mum, and it was one of those features that was very much going to break a whole portion of the app. And so we make the decision that says we prioritize things that add value. And that's one of those places where it would take an awful lot of work to rebuild a thing that wasn't adding a lot of value to very many people, but love the sentiment of it. Know that part of what makes Whatnot special is not just the money, but it is the feeling of support. And so we will look for ways to bring something like that or that back. It just will be a while.
Okay, thank you. Ada Dominguez, are there any plans to be able to do cross-category listing for shows?
Not explicitly. In fact, what we'd like to see happen and works very well right now is you can use tags to tell us more about the products that are in your show, and we can use that to better kind of cross-categorize. The downside of letting people cross-categorize is it creates what's called a race to the bottom, where because Andy's show is in 2 categories, I feel like I'm losing if I'm not listed in 2 categories, and it incentivizes every seller to put themselves in a category that maybe isn't particularly relevant for a buyer, and it just fouls up the ability for buyers to find what they want. And if buyers don't find what they want, sellers don't get sales. And if sellers don't get sales, everybody loses. So we're looking for the right ways to maximize your audience. I promise I am super incentivized to maximize the relevant audience we drive to you. It's mostly about how do we do that in an efficient way rather than a kind of blunt force way.
I can't believe you didn't plug making great listings as a part of that.
Making great listings is at its core. We just need to make it easier to make great listings before I ask everybody to do it over and over.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That one's on me.
All right. Two more questions. Here's one. Mama Fox Yo, is there a way to get on the list for beta testing? It's my favorite thing.
Mama Fox, you are already on the list. We randomize who people are in for beta tests for most of the things because we want to make sure we have a representative sample. And when we are looking for particular products that are aimed at a particular seller, say we're trying to identify what we could do with barcode scanning in sneakers, or we're trying to identify what we could do for shipping exemptions in plants, we go through and find sellers in those categories that meet some of those criteria. And then again, we tend to randomize who we're reaching out to. It's important that we don't just build for the 3 people that we know personally, but we are, diverse in who we're testing with.
Right on. Last question comes from 3 more collectors. Do you host seller seminars or?
Did you plant
Kenny? This is an absolute plant.
Yeah, this is a call. This is a call.
I swear to God, I have nothing to do with these questions.
This is sus. I'm just reading them. This is sus as hell, Kenny.
I guarantee if it is sus, that's on Kiyomi or Casey. 3 more collectors is literally asking, do you host seller get-togethers, seminars?
This is the greatest tip of all time, Kenny. Don't drop it.
You are in one. Yes, 3 more collectors. We do follow Whatnot Sellers. We can brag on Kenny because he can't do it for himself, but this is a great forum to both find information, create not just this session, but there's a bunch of live settings and places that we want to deeply connect with users and have people connect with each other. I don't know if that perfectly answered your question, but Kenny, what did we miss? Because the answer is for sure yes.
All right, cool. Definitely didn't plant that, I promise. So we've got before we wrap, we're at time. We're gonna rate a seller who's actually selling. Guess it. Can the chat guess? Can you guys guess? What's the hottest thing right now in the world? We're gonna rate it, and we're gonna try to ride the craze with the seller. They've only got 14 people or so in their show, so we'll pull up. You don't have to buy anything. Just show some love. Say what's up.
Make their day, chat.
Yeah, make their day. Chat knows how to turn up. But Andy, Tom, any sort of parting remarks? Any thoughts before we end? I want to again thank you guys for taking the time to do this. I also want to thank the chat. The vibes have been really good. A ton of great questions we didn't get to, but we will read through them. So thank you, chat. Thank you, Tom and Andy, and of course, Andy, Tom. Any thoughts, remarks?
I'll just take, because I think it was Tom's, idea to put a session like this together. For as hard as we work and as much as we care about the things we need to build, the things we need to fix, I think the impetus for this was we're all super fired up because of showing up at a chat and having 600 people in the room that are really excited to be here and to sell here. And so this idea of there's never been a better time to sell on Whatnot is not lip service. I think there's a lot to do that we need to build, but that we're very excited and fired up for all the people that are building incredible businesses here. So shout out and thank you for doing that, and promise that all the things we talk about and more are things that we'll continue to build. So we're here for it.
Love it. Sweet. It's early days, chat. Congratulations on getting in on the ground floor.
Yeah, still early days, chat. Still early days. All right, chat. Let's raid this seller. Name of the seller is Big Bang Breaks. Big Bang Breakers. All right, cool. All right, chat. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us.
See ya.